Can we apply the portrait lighting effect easily to our portraits or images in Affinity? So in this video, we'll find out how to apply the portrait lighting effect to our portraits or images inside of Affinity. So before starting, if you want to follow along with this tutorial, please find the link for the images in the description. Now with that said, let's get started with the video. So in order to demonstrate portrait lighting tool inside of Affinity, first of all, we'll simply navigate below and open our Finder window. From the Finder window, we'll simply click and drag the portrait file inside of our Affinity UI. Now this opens our portrait file or portrait image, and if you look at the top, you can also see that Affinity has automatically switched from Pixel Studio mode to Canva AI mode. And just to notify you, you can only access this feature if you are a pro Canva AI subscriber. Now to access the portrait lighting tool, we'll simply navigate and select the portrait lighting tool, and now you can see that it has automatically applied the portrait lighting effect in its default settings. Now we'll simply click and reposition our portrait lighting settings box on the right, and if you observe inside of our canvas, you can see that the portrait lighting controls are also visible right here on top of our canvas. So we can manually control the position of our light source. We can use the center point of origin right here. So I'll simply click and adjust the center point of our origin to be somewhere right here. And now we can also control the radius of our light source. And to do that, we'll simply use the next point on top of our circle. So I'll simply click on this particular point and manually adjust the radius. Now you can see that it now decreases the radius, and we can also increase the radius further like so. So I'll set the value of radius to somewhere right here manually. And if we want, we can also control the radius value on the portrait lighting settings inside of the portrait lighting box. So if you look here, you can see that we have the radius option. We can simply adjust the radius slider in order to decrease the radius value like so. So I'll simply set the value all the way to 100% for now. And after setting the radius value to 100%, next, let's check the other settings that we have inside of our portrait lighting box. So the first settings we have is the diffuse settings. For the diffuse option, let's go ahead and click on the diffuse slider and adjust the value for the diffuse slider like so. So we'll simply decrease the diffuse option for now, since the diffuse option will allow us to control the intensity of the lighting effect that is affecting the facial elements of our subject. So I'll simply set the value to somewhere at maybe 62% for now, since we don't want to get rid of many details on our facial elements of the subject. So the next option that we have is the specular option. The specular option simply allows us to control the intensity of the lights towards the particular points in the facial structure. So you can see here, if we increase the value of specular, the light is being concentrated only on certain portion of the subject. So if we simply decrease the specular value, you can see that now the concentration of the intensity of the light is slowly starting to even out across the facial elements like so. So we can simply decrease it to somewhere at maybe 15% for now. And you can now see that it has adjusted the concentration of the intensity of light on our portrait. So the next thing we can again do is increase the diffuse option a bit, maybe this time. So we'll set the value to 72% in order to increase the intensity by controlling the diffuse option. So the next thing that we can also do is adjust the value of ambient in order to introduce the shadows inside of our portrait. So what we can do is simply click on the ambient slider and decrease the value like so, and this will introduce the shadow, and introducing the shadow will help us to apply the contrast in terms of highlights and shadows to our portrait by making the lighting effect much more visible. So what we can do now is increase the diffuse value again in order to check out or adjust the intensity of our lighting. So we can simply set the diffuse value to 92% for now. And what it does is it will increase the intensity of lighting as well as spread out its effect throughout the frontal facial elements of our subject. Now, next we can also adjust the specular option in order to increase the intensity to add the dimension of the highlights and shadows in the front facial elements of our subject. So I'll set the value to 32% for now. And I think this is looking much more natural. And the next thing that we can again or also do is simply click on the center point of our light source and then simply adjust it like so. So I'll set the light source to somewhere at this particular point so that the light affecting will affect this particular facial areas, which is much more natural by giving it a depth and dimension. Now let's check the other option that we have inside of the portrait lighting box. So as you can see here inside of the portrait lighting box, we have the next option of light. So this simply means that we have only one light source for now, which is indicated by the option of 1 when we clicked on the drop down of the light property. The option 1 is being checked. That means currently our light source 1 has been actively selected. And if you look below, we have other settings as well. So for example, let's say we want to make the copy of this light source at the same position with the same settings. Then we can simply click on the copy button. And now you can see that this automatically makes a copy of this particular primary light source that we have created. And if we want to remove it, we can simply click on the remove button to get rid of it. Now we can also click on the add button to add a new light source, which is actually a default light source with the default settings. And the added advantage of adding multiple light source is that it will allow us to create a dimension to our portrait. So I'll simply navigate below and click on the remove button in order to get rid of it. So for now, we'll simply adjust the portrait lighting settings only for one light source, and we'll add the light source later if we need it. So if we look beneath these settings, you can see that we have a type option, and inside of the type option, we have two options. For this video, we'll only be focusing on the point light. So I'll simply select the point light option for now. And if we look below, we also have the distance option. So the distance option, as the name implies, allows us to control the distance of the light source. If we simply click on this particular slider of the distance and then drag it to the right like so, you can see that now the distance of the light source is moving closer to our facial elements of the subject. And if we simply click on the slider of the distance and drag it all the way to the left, now you can see that the distance of our light source is gradually moving far away from our subject. Now we'll simply adjust the slider of the distance and increase the value of the distance all the way to the right like so for now in order to move our light source a bit closer to our subject. Now the next option we have is the strength option. So as the name implies, the strength option simply allows us to control the intensity of the light. So if we simply click and drag strength option all the way to the left, you can see that it is decreasing the intensity or strength of the light. So if we increase the strength option all the way to the right, you can see now that it is gradually increasing the intensity of our light source. Now let us decrease the distance value to add a dimension to our subject. Now you can see that the light source is now creating a much more natural dimension by introducing the shadows in this particular areas and retaining the light in this particular areas. Now since the light is clipping the details in few areas right here as well as right here of our subject, I'll simply decrease the specular option as well. So I'll simply decrease the specular option to somewhere at maybe 16% for now. And now I'm satisfied with this particular settings. Next, after I'm satisfied with this settings, I'll simply click on apply button. But before that, let us check the before and after. So if I simply click on this split view option, so this is the before and this is the after. Now let us go ahead and click on the apply option in order to apply our portrait lighting. However, before that, we can also introduce the lighting to this particular portion of our subject as well. So for that, first of all, I'll get rid of the before and after view by simply clicking on no split view option, and let's add a new light source for that. So I'll simply click on the add button right here, which will add a new light source. And now we'll simply click on this particular center point of origin and then reposition our light source right here. So I think this particular position is fine for now. And the next thing that we'll be doing is, first of all, adjusting the strength of our light source. So I'll simply click and drag our strength slider like so in order to adjust the strength of our light source. Since the intensity of the light source in this particular area will be much more less than the intensity of the front facial elements of our subject, we'll simply adjust the strength or decrease it a bit like so to somewhere at 42% for now. And after setting the strength value to 42%, the next thing that we can also do is adjust the distance to 79%. The next thing that we can also do is increase the diffuse option in order to increase the intensity of the light source a bit by spreading out the effect of the lighting in the neck portion or areas of our subject. And finally, let's control the radius option that we have like so that it will only be limited to this particular portion of our subject, which is the neck areas, which in turn will not affect our primary source of light that we have recently applied. So now, after we are satisfied, let's go ahead and click on the apply button in order to apply its effects. Now let's switch back to Pixel Studio, and after switching back our studio to Pixel Studio, now to check the before and after, I'll simply click on the Finder window and then drag the original portrait file again like so, and I'll align our image to the center by simply using the alignment tool at the top in order to align it to the center both horizontally and vertically. So this was the original image, which is the before, and this now is the after. So if you find this video helpful, please click on the like button, and for more helpful tips and tricks related to Affinity, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching this video and see you on the next one.